Hi, and welcome back to this beautiful membrane that we have here. Get my pen. And this is the lipid bilayer, so the fluid mosaic model. There's a video that I really want you to see that has it sort of bouncing to give you the idea of how it's not rigid. And it's about a 20-second video, but really helpful, so you should look at it. So here we have these little structures that are drawn like kind of with a little head and the legs. And notice how the heads are pointing. Let's make this the outside of the cell. This is the outside of the cell, and then this is the inside of the cell. Inside of the cell. Okay, so this is a very important orientation because think of what's outside. There's a lot of fluid. I'm going to make an F here. A lot of fluid outside. So I have to have some sort of structure here, some sort of molecule that gets along with that fluid. I'm going to write that out. And then it turns out that there's a lot of fluid on the inside, and I also need to have those molecules that get along with that fluid, which is mostly water, in and out. And so this arrangement then is showing that the heads of these sort of stylized molecules are pointing out towards the fluid and in towards fluid also. So in much more detail then, because that's the stylized version of it, where we have a region of the head, which is called hydrophilic, which means it likes water. And a region, so here we want likes water because there's fluid all the way on the outside here. So it's better get along with water. And there's a lot of water on the inside, so it better get along with water. But what we want to see is that this middle section, like this, does not. That part does not get along with water. Let's keep looking. So if it does not get along with water, then we're going to call that region hydrophobic. Hydrophobic and hydrophilic. Water loving and water repelling or hiding from water. Now it doesn't really look like that. It looks like this, but it's not something that you're going to memorize and know how to put this together. Or if we break it down into the actual atoms here that make it up, you're not going to memorize that either. I just want you to have the big picture. The big picture is what? Big picture is that you have this top region here that we're calling the head that has a phosphate. Very important. So it's a phospholipid because it has the phosphorus for the P here, and then it has oxygen, 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 oxygen attached onto it. That is a phosphate group. And up here also, it also has a nitrogen containing group. But really what I want you to know more and more interested is it has this phosphate. And the important thing here is that this phosphate, I'm going to put it like this, has a negative charge to it. See it here? Right there, has a negative charge. So this molecule here, responsible for the head, we're going to make a negative charge right there also. And then this other part is the lipid part, is the fatty, the fatty acid tails here, and these two legs are tails, are fats. And they even colored it in yellow for you there. Okay, so that's going to be hydrophobic. It does not like water. So the big deal, I'm going to go back again a slide, showing you that this all hydrophilic region here is always bathed in water. And the hydrophilic region down here is also bathed in water. But in between then is a barrier. Okay, if it's fatty, it's a barrier. And it's a barrier to any a molecule that wants to get into that cell or wants to get out of that cell and is water soluble. So if it's water soluble, it comes here and bounces off. It comes here and bounces off. If you are fat soluble, then you'll be able to, depending on your size, scoot through. So this is a fat. I'm going to have to erase this one when the new words come up. So see if that's absolutely clear. So if it's a fat, we'll be able to cross this membrane. And if you are water soluble, sorry, you will not. Okay, and that's why it's so important. Now, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, what about water? Water itself is water soluble. So if we had a tiny molecule of water, because molecules of water are very tiny, then that's a little exception. This water molecule can actually come in here, out here, and out there, and get out. Okay, because it's tiny. But any larger molecule that's water soluble will not be able to cross that membrane. It'll need to have some sort of carrier to do it for it. Okay, I have a clicker. The fluid found in the region outside of a skin cell, any cell, skin cell I called it here, is called, and I'm actually not going to give you the answer, and instead I'm going to post it at the end of the lecture. Think about it. You can always pause, think about it, and then we'll continue on. All right, more fat in the membrane. Other than those two chains of fatty acids, we have more fat in the membrane, and that is cholesterol. So cholesterol is part of that membrane. 20% of the lipid molecules in the membrane are cholesterol. We have a lot of cholesterol in the membrane. And what comes up always is, oh, well, that must be bad because cholesterol is terrible. And I know about, good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, but we're going to reserve that thought for good cholesterol and bad cholesterol in the blood. Okay? And one is circulating and can cause problems, and the other one can be stashed away and doesn't cause problems. But what we want to think now is just on this 20% here that is in the membrane, and that is not bad. We want it there. It's going to add flexibility to that membrane. We manufacture it. We want it there. So it's a good thing, not a bad thing. What about sugars? Well, we had mentioned that in this diagram, these little green structures that are protruding to the outside of the cell are glycolipids. So 5% of the membrane has these glycolipids. We want those there too. So if it's a glycolipid, it's a lipid with sugar on them or with glucose on it. It could be a glycoprotein also, which is a protein with the glucose on it. They occur only in the extracellular fluid. Notice how they're not coming down this way. They're only, all these green guys, they're only protruding to the outside of the cell, to the extracellular fluid. They are very important. They're very important in cell-to-cell interactions, how cells communicate with each other. So we want them there. And this is just an enlarged picture of that. So embedded in the lipid bilayer are these purple proteins. Sometimes attached onto it, you'll have a chain of carbohydrate here. So it's, glucose chain. So it's going to be called gluco, and then the protein, glucoprotein. This one's a glycolipid because it doesn't have the protein on it. It's just attached to the lipid below. So it's a glycolipid. And then here, drawn in this time, I don't have to draw them in, is cholesterol. So that's going to be found in that membrane, that cholesterol. And again, the phospholipid bilayer. Okay, and it's labeled here, phospholipid bilayer. So it's a really nice picture of it. And what we're going to talk only slightly about, but you hear more about in human physiology, is these proteins that are embedded form channels. So if that molecule that is water soluble cannot cross this membrane, right, it's going to bounce off, then we're going to provide it with a specific channel, a doorway where it can actually go through and get to the other side. So some molecules that are unable to cross this membrane can use these proteins as doorways, as channels to exit or to enter the cell. the head of this molecule is hydrophobic, hydrophilic, both A and B, or water repelling. Figure it out. I'm going to cut here. We're going to stop this mini lecture to start the next one after this one clicker. Thanks for listening.